we need to deliver the applications people want. And I tell you, we'll start on this inside with Arnaud, and we'll ask you first.
Well,
it's on.
Okay, it's on. The quality of WebRTC when you implement as it is on works really well. I mean, the quality on the desktop is really amazing. The first test we made, we were really surprised. And the thing is, when you want to do the same thing on mobile, it's really a big issue. Just because the bit rate is really low, the quality is not so good. So, to my point of view, the real issue is the mobile devices. And also, the WebRTC completely depend on the quality of the network. So if you have a good QoS on the network, you can manage the flow, and you can put a bandwidth specific for the WebRTC, and it would work. But when you depend on a network and you don't have any clue how it is managed, you should be lucky.
You're doing a lot of videos, so.
Yeah, and in fact,
Mic's up, guys.
15th guy in a row to see if his mic's working here. Let's see. As a Cisco guy, it should come as no surprise that when I hear quality of service, I think mostly in terms of quality of service on the network, the path that the media is following. And as such, with respect to WebRTC, I don't think it's impacting positively or negatively much about what happens once the media hits your wireless network, the middle mile, and all the nasty places where things can go wrong. Our endeavor to ensure you were getting an acceptable video experience was to accommodate for bad network conditions that yield poor quality of service. So we architected such that we can run over the top in the lowest delivery cost mode possible, or in the scenarios where we're partnering with those that have robust networks, either at the large enterprise level or at the telco level, that we can actually run media over their network and try to address some of the QoS issues that can crater a video experience.
So I can speak mostly to the voice side of things, and from our experience on voice over the public internet, it's actually quite good. You know, I think in a lot of our experience, you know, when we first were doing with this from Flash in the browser, the limitations there were, you know, around codecs and whatnot were a little bit disappointing. But what we found at WebRTC is you know, a greatly improved experience. And we generally believe the internet is a state where you can have good conversations over the web, and specifically to voice. And you know, video is a whole other beast. But for now, we're quite satisfied, and we really look at it from our customer satisfaction standpoint. And you know, what we like to do is always monitor, always make sure that the quality is there, and then also, you know, help customers figure out what is going on and giving them feedback to the user. And we think a lot about the user and the user's experience, and also how you can manage expectations in the browser, much like when, you know, watching a video on Netflix or Amazon Player, you get some sense of like signal strength and like how good that audio is going to be. Giving that feedback to the user really helps manage the expectation and know what they're going to get.
Yeah, so from my perspective, quality of service, it's all about the quality of the end user experience. I don't care if it's a managed network, whatever it's there. Actually, our focus is we should make sure that the quality can be absolutely tremendously excellent, regardless of if you're using some managed network, QoS stuff, or whatever. So for us, that's the key thing is to focus on that the end user experience is absolutely there. Then on top of that, obviously for you guys that are providing services, etc., that's where you can differentiate by doing even more on that. But we're not going to stop developing to get the best possible experience and assume that the network is as shitty as it is.
Excellent. So I'll open over to the audience. Any questions from the audience? You guys all just burned out for the day?
Bill, for the panel, we're talking about now in terms of bandwidth and QoS. What about when that 2.5 million additional
Well, if they all upgrade their browsers and CPUs and sort of create a better, less heterogeneous sort of asset that they bring to the encounter, I think we're going to be in fine shape. I see that the investment in network at a global scale isn't going to, in fact, if nothing, more than anything else, it's going to accelerate based on the type of numbers that we saw earlier today. And I haven't seen anything that lead me to believe otherwise.
I think basically, I mean, we all know that everything is getting better in terms of capacity and all, but at the same time, you have the other effect of getting more services, more users, whatever that want to use it. So, and it seems like it always continues to just pan out pretty roughly that everything improves slightly, but not as fast as it could if you didn't add users, for example. So I'm not worried. I don't think anything will break down tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. But it means that it's not a challenge that's going away just because you get better pipes or whatever.
Yeah. I myself, I'm not worried about the internet. I do think an area of not concern, just a challenge, like you said, is on mobile, and that's an area where those networks are so poor for what we're doing, and we're really excited about things like LTE. But like that's a whole area where I think will continue to be challenging for an optimal user experience.
Any other questions? Yes, go ahead. Yell it out.
There are no things within WebRTC to set priority on these media streams or anything that the network can interpret. There's no such provisions on that.
So the question was there doesn't appear to be in WebRTC anything to be able to set priorities on media streams. How do we manage priority on media streams within WebRTC?
Well, again, I've never been a big believer of trying to compartmentalize these things. It should work anyway, but of course you can do that in certain ways within the network anyway. So it doesn't exclude that possibility, but we cannot assume that that's the case, and we don't want to assume that that's the case.
Dean?
How are we going to deal with people running multiple concurrent WebRTC tabs in their browsers or apps, or you have two problems. Firstly, which browser window is ringing at me, and the other one is if I have two browser windows talking to me at the same time, what happens?
So the question is when you have multiple browser windows trying to talk to you at the same time or ringing to you at the same time, how do you identify which one is actually the one you want to talk to and keep from becoming totally schizophrenic? I think that was the question.
Well, in many ways, it's a step better than when it is today, when you have several applications that don't talk to each other. Now, at least you're in one browser, typically, and that actually talk to the other tabs and can figure something out. So
it implies application interoperability for different applications, different tabs.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's at least, so for example, the browser knows something, so the browser can add value that you can't do otherwise.
Yeah, you'd imagine you could force it down to the application to, in this case, if there's an application or the stream live, what do you want to do? And at this point, it would be incumbent upon the application to be smart and drive that user experience. And I think for us, that's fair and something we can work with. And like you said, this, a schizophrenic experience where you have different things happening here and there. Obviously, I much prefer an area where I can have some control, where I can do something. I can't do something with my with the way things are today.
Isn't there embedded in that question a concept of how identity is going to be managed? That multiple people have reached you at the same identity within different tabs or applications, and that somebody ought to be doing something to manage traffic to that identity.
I think that brings there's an interesting question that, and it was brought up in one of the earlier panels that, the concept of push, and I think that's one of the things that's really missing in WebRTC is, and it's a little bit more than push. It's really along the lines of, when I go to a website, can I register with that website that website has the right to interrupt me? Mm-hmm. Which is really what, if you think about the phone system, you give a device the right to interrupt you, and that becomes kind of an exclusively given right. What's interesting about WebRTC is, are we going to have a way to extend that right to multiple sites so they can interrupt you? when I turn my browser on, it knows which sites can interrupt it and tells those sites where it is, because obviously the browser changes with IP addresses. So it's an interesting thought process. Is that something that seems important to you guys to work out?
To me, it almost seems like we're asking, can the browser start talking to us? And anyways, I'm thinking about this, and like, I'm thinking about my Android phone. I have a bunch of processes running in the background, and I let them all be there, and I let them all notify me and let me going. Are we going to start letting the browser morph into something more than just Windows, and just applications contained in those windows? And does the browser have identity? Does the browser, you know, when you start up your browser, you log into some service that lets you be called? And I know that's a question of the browser people. I think it's interesting. What I would be scared about is the browser morphing into this horrendous beast that can do all this stuff. And there's something nice and clean that in the current model, but obviously there's a lot of things to be thinking about. But what does the browser become? What does Chrome become?
Well, I think, wouldn't it be nice if you just sign into your Google account and then everybody reads you? I don't see what else we need to discuss. Yeah. It's pretty simple.
Yeah. Any other questions? Yes, Colin.
So, on all these things with a balance of, I don't want everyone and every website to have access to my camera, and on the other hand, I don't want to be constantly clicking yes to dialog boxes saying, can I send something access my camera? How do you guys feel the right balance can be met between them? What is your view of the balance, or how do we get to having the right?
I have one aesthetic request that's actually right out of that territory, Colin. I was going to raise it independently if I didn't have a chance to do it here. I'd like for those notifications not to look like malware or other pop-up notifications. I'd like it to be visually obvious that it's a productivity and communication thing that's about to happen. You're not something that's about to harm your computer. It's a very simple thing at a user level, but someone sitting in an enterprise setting is going to see that same banner I see from time to time.
Yeah, but there is something to say, the standardization of that. It looks just like the location permission, just all the crap. It doesn't look good, but it's better than Flash, right? So,
but it keeps them from using the application.
Yeah. We'll get there. I mean, it is just launched.
But that's fine for you that hopefully are providing a real nice service that actually is not there to harm me. But the other one, it looks the same, so it's kind of nice if it looks a little bit scary. So it's not an easy trade-off between the two, I think.
Maybe not scary, but descriptive and clear. I mean,
that's what I'm getting at.
No, I'm just exaggerating.
Well, but we don't want to play where we, Android and those permissions and like course location. What the hell does that mean? Like most users, so too much specificity is a concern.
But so is that the biggest security concern? What are the other security concerns other than controlling the camera, how you do that, how do you keep it from malware? What are some of the other things that you think are concerns that could really limit WebRTC and its adoption? I mean, should we be worried about denial of service attacks on web servers? Does that change things? And I think there's actually one question here that's the concept of a rogue app. I mean, it's an interesting perspective. When I give the app the right to access my camera, how do I know where that app is sending the camera picture? Do I know, in fact, that it's only sending that camera picture to the person I'm talking to and it's not sending it to somebody else who happens to be recording it on some website somewhere? It's an interesting question. So thought process, what are the security concerns we have to think about that if something blew up would cause people to say, we don't trust this and we won't use it?
Well, in the same way as any other service, you have to trust your service provider in certain ways. When you set it up, you give some trust there, and that's where the problems may occur. But the most important thing is that nobody can just hijack your camera or your microphone. You have deliberately allowed them to do it, and as soon as you do that, it's obviously an education issue because. Just because you do that, not every user will understand that means that they can send it wherever they want to, more or less. But and then the other obvious, very important security part of it is that it should not be possible for a third party to tap into what you do in there. So again, the one that you allowed to get access to it, that's the only one that should be able to see anything of it. And on the network, it's always secure. It's always encrypted on the network. That's a key tenet of this whole effort.
I mean, that's actually an interesting point. Is I think Apple's made a lot of hay out of, in the App Store that apps are tested and they're trusted. I mean, do we need kind of to develop the good housekeeping seal of approval for WebRTC apps that they're not doing? I mean,
no.
It's an interesting
Not
question.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying it's Apple. I'm just saying, do we need something like that, or are consumers not going to realize, and are there going to be issues?
I mean, we have our distribution channels and even for web apps in the web store, and we obviously need to, in order to allow that method to go through there, we have to provide some kind of value by limiting that risk. So that's one method, but that doesn't mean that that's the only way you can do this, and you can't do that.
And the thing is, like the biggest concern I'd have is getting in front of innovation, and like, when I think of like the most horrific model I can think of, and it's like, this is a little bit related to this world, but like when I think about how you go about provisioning shortcodes, if anyone's done that, it's really painful, and you don't get any innovation. That's why there's never been innovation in SMS. But like, nothing should get in the way of people being able to create. And that's like would be terrifying. Whether it's a store and then that gives an extra trust for people who want to only go from a store. That's the prerogative.
I think where we might benefit from some governance well in advance of the topic you raised, Phil, would be around some sort of objective understanding of where all of the browser providers are with respect to implementing all the shoulds and musts, and knowing that there's a unified offer from compliant browser to compliant browser. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what body exists today to ensure that all the shoulds and musts are being implemented in a way that doesn't fracture the system.
So you want an authority that goes out and...
I hate the word authority, but I guess that's what I'm saying, yeah.
Okay, I'm not sure I'm signing up for it.
So what you're saying is, as an app vendor, knowing that the functionality, that there's a set of commonality of functionality across the browsers,
yes,
certain functions, especially in some of these security areas, may be pretty important.
A baseline that we can all build to, so that from one enterprise to the next, there's an IE enterprise out there, there's a Chrome enterprise out there, that what we've built for them will work on a consistent basis because the standard has been respected at some baseline level, and to know that as we start to build.
I mean, of course, it's in our interest to start with, and that's why we have standards, and that's why the standard says what is must, what is should, etc. And if you don't do that, you could have someone to go and knock you on the head, but I'm not sure that's really going to happen. I think it's going to work out really well anyway because it's absolutely in our interest, and otherwise it's not working. And that's what we're working on every day here, really, really hard to make sure that we set the right expectations and only require what you have to do there. And then there can be differences, but as long as everything is interoperable and you can write code that works in all browsers without too much extra work, then we're good. Yeah.
So for all of you here, what's been from the developer side, obviously Google here from the Chrome side, what's the thing that they could do that would make your life better? What was the challenge, what was the biggest thing that you saw in your development that you say, hey guys, you really have to take care of this and help us fix this? Your biggest headache?
Well, the biggest headache that we experienced, and we took it on ourselves. We knew this would be the case. So spec churn and like knowing, implementing our product against WebRTC when it wasn't stable yet. But guess what? We knew that was the case, and because we wanted to be when it was in Chrome 23, we wanted to be there. So that was frustrating, but to be expected. And I think from our side, it was pretty much, we were overall pleased, and I think that the frustration really is that. The question is when we take what we did for Chrome and then we go and try to implement it for Firefox, is it going to just work? And we seeing that is the case, and we're doing that right now. But that's our real area of concern. Once things have stabilized, once we go to the next browser, is it just going to be easy, or are we going to have to fiddle and whatnot?
Okay, so that's interesting. Can I just ask for everyone's here thoughts on if the process we have been following is the right one? I mean, for us, obviously, waiting till the standard is done is not necessarily the best way to build a standard, because you need to get it out and be tested. Do you think that we've released it too early, or at about the right stage, or at that the churn has been too big, or that it's kind of roughly what you would expect, or what do you want it to be?
So it was roughly what we expected. We also, as we saw lots of churn, we held off on the development, and then once we saw things firming up, we definitely put more resources against it, and that sort of, we wanted to be part of the conversation, wanted to see what was going on. Obviously we'd always like things faster. I wanted this 2 quarters ago, naturally, but I'm just going to be realistic. But near the end, it was fine, and still, I'm still concerned when Chrome 24 comes out, is my app going to work? Guess what? It doesn't right now, so now we're fiddling and making sure, but it should be fixed by next week. But that's the type of stuff, and so it's maybe not specific WebRTC, but working against Chrome. And what's in Chrome, is that the real standard, or is it, so?
We've led parallel lives at TenHands to my pal here from Twilio. I have some smart guys over there against the side who thought long and hard about when we would choose to synchronize and catch up. To try to put a commercial service in meant that we needed to know to pick the right time and point resources at that. The first catch up to where Chrome was the hardest one. They've become subsequently more easy, and I would settle in at about the same answer you provided, Thomas, that we're pretty satisfied with the pace of change and the churn because we had to systematize how we accommodated it into our workflow. That was expected. I don't think you could do anything better.
Okay. Thanks.
And it landed. So finally, yeah.
It's right there.
I thought it was going to unfortunately slip into Q1 or Q2, but like Q4 actually meant Q4 eventually, so that was great.
Arnaud, you had a comment on that? Or?
Well, we are really proud to be one of the first application which is live. You can use it. You will need Chrome 23. That's all. So
Mike?
hello?
Guide?
It's on, yeah.
So once again. So, Chrome, the 23rd version of Chrome is really an opportunity for Bistri to be one of the first implementation of WebRTC for everyone. So you just need Chrome 23, and you can make a video call with WebRTC. The biggest part was to let the user know how to deal with the button, with the acceptation buttons. Like, okay, you click here, then click there, then click over there, and finally you can see the other person. But once it's done, you can click and select a combo, and then each time you use Bistri, you don't have to click on these all buttons. So for me, it's a real opportunity to have implemented Chrome 23. I'm dying to implement the same service in Firefox, and also on the mobile devices.
Any other questions from the audience? You got to have some burning questions out there. Go.
Any comments on the forecast for integration in Google Apps?
No. No. Well, I mean, I don't give out any timelines on anything, so I rather not really dwell into it at all.
Good.
How much of what's going between the device and the network on WebRTC is encrypted, and any thoughts on what it's likely to look like to a DPI box or a policy server or something like that in the network?
You want me to talk to you? So, well, it is encrypted from endpoint to endpoint.
There you
Is it still identifiable? You know, will there be an obvious, that looks like WebRTC signature, even if you can't actually tell what's inside it?
I don't know if that's possible. I would have to ask someone like Colin or Justin or so. but they're not paying attention, so.
Any other audience questions? So here's an interesting question. How many end users do you think will have a WebRTC-enabled device at the end of 2013 and at the end of 2014? I mean, we've heard numbers, a couple of billion, 2.5 billion devices out there, another 2.5 billion devices coming, 4 billion devices by 2016. So, I mean, one of the big questions that I think everybody's going to ask is, what's the market opportunity? We may all think it's 4 billion by 2014. Kind of, what do we think it is by the end of 2013, the end of 2014? Are we talking tens of millions of people, or are we talking hundreds of millions of endpoints and accessible users?
Already today, we have hundreds of millions, so that's easy to answer.
Yeah. So we'd hope it would be built into all modern browsers. That would make me happy. And there you go. There's hundreds of millions of people. And then, you know, how the manifestation of this on mobile, and thinking about that, and how we can build it into SDKs that we run, that'd be interesting. I think it would be great for it to be in mobile Chrome, but 2014, I don't know. Do you think?
Oh, in mobile Chrome, yes. That would be in 2013.
There you go.
That as much as that, I can probably
Q4. Say. So I mean, hearing stuff like that, I mean, you know, there you go. You got Android, you got modern web browsers. That's billions.
Other than Apple, that's the only thing we need to worry about still.
Well, Android's doing. I mean, I love Apple products as well, but you know, just look at Android numbers, and that's pretty impressive. So you'll have a large addressable audience.
I'll keep coming back to you guys. Any other questions? Somebody's out there's got to have a exciting and controversial question, don't you? No? Yeah. Go ahead.
I'd like to follow up on an answer that was given by the panelist relative to the certifying authority that was brought up earlier. Your answer was, we don't need it because it wouldn't be in our best interest if we don't work together. Now, given the fact that communications in this country and globally, that's never worked, unless you had a strong company dominating the industry and establishing a de facto standard, or it has to be in compliance with some governmental regulation. What makes you think that, and especially since Microsoft and Apple aren't involved with the Google Mozilla standard, what makes you think that you don't need a certifying?
Well, I think maybe to clarify, the browser is a client, and I was talking about what any certification of browsers. And I don't think that we have necessarily certification of other endpoints and need to introduce that for this. So that's my answer.
So let me ask a question. So if you had one feature that's not, for each of the teams that have done development, the one feature that wasn't in WebRTC that you really like to see there, what was it? Arnaud, was there something that you couldn't do that WebRTC didn't let you do that you really wanted to be able to do? Or is it complete and 100% met all your dreams?
Perfect.
Your fantasies are complete?
No, my fantasies are not completed yet. Once the WebRTC connection is established, okay, you can see the other person, etc. But you don't have any control anymore on the devices. I mean, you can switch off the camera and switch on, and the same with the input or the microphone. If you have multiple inputs, you can switch from one to another during a call. So it probably.
So you're saying that the fact that the inputs are static once they're set up.
Yeah, exactly.
And the inability to kind of move between them dynamically within a connected WebRTC transmission flow. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, mine are pretty simple. If you were here earlier for Todd Simpson's prezo, I really liked the how you solve the what's on top, the API that floated across tab to tab. I thought that was a neat thing and very usable in a deployment where a user may lose track of where that is. At a maybe more macro level, I'd love for the codec issue, the video codec issue to be resolved.
So I can speak mostly from the voice side. We haven't played around enough with the video side of things. I'm sure there's plenty there that we'd comment on. But actually, I think the simplest thing is back to your permissions. And I know that's Chrome. It's not inherently WebRTC, but there's something about that, just that barrier to start interacting. On the voice side, I'll also say that it's pretty fresh and new for us. So I think the issues that we find will be great when we have the hundreds of thousands of users bashing on our product, and then all of a sudden, hey, our developer saying, I want to do this, I want to do that, and us trying to figure out what we can and cannot do. For now, it's good, but obviously we're obviously gonna want things.
Yeah, you're bringing up things that we are aware of and that we are working on and iterating. For example, device selection and handling. That's something that we are improving, and it will, obviously you don't get it absolutely right the first time. The permission things, the actual user interface, there's coming a refresh here in M25, and that will come more after that. Yeah. It's definitely good feedback, and we hopefully will address it as well as we can in the future.
Yeah.
So, come back to a point, Mark, you made. So video codecs has been a discussion, and there's obviously, there's two very interesting questions about video codecs. Do you use a video codec that is an open source, essentially quote unquote free, let's say, video codec, or one of the codecs that has royalties associated with it and the quality differences? Let's have a discussion about what do we think is the right path for WebRTC? Should we support both kinds? Is one more important than the other? What's the right path moving forward? And if we do get into the royalty environment, how do we manage the way royalties work? So any thought process?
I think that's a separate conference that you need to put together.
Well, we've got 7 minutes left, so we can have a long conversation about it.
We're going to wrap this up in 7 minutes.
Right, 7 minutes. Any thoughts? It seems to me that's one of the big issues, which is, if we end up with, an H.264, how are we going to manage the cost structure of that? Obviously, I don't think Google's going to pay for it in the browser. Is it going to get paid for in the service site? How does that impact service delivery? How do you account for it? Et cetera, et cetera. So it's an interesting question. I think that one that we really have to resolve fairly quickly. So your thoughts is going out with applications, video especially, Mark, in your case. How do you see that kind of coming together?
Our choice was very simple. We're venture-funded startups, so we chose the least cost delivery modes available to us, from AWS to everything that Google so graciously put out there for us to use. And we'll continue down that path until we have to choose otherwise. And what I'd like to be able to get to is steady state as quickly as possible. At a technical level, we can all probably do almost anything.
Right.
It may be additional friction or additional payload. Some burden will be extracted for doing something that's inelegant. But the faster we get to that steady state, the more quickly application providers like us can accommodate it. So if someone says, look, it's going to be a 2-codec environment, we'll figure out a way to make it work.
Yeah.
But don't make us wonder whether it's going to be a 2-codec environment for the next 2 years and wonder why WebRTC didn't become the disruptive force we all want it to be.
Any other comments on that? Dan, we're getting through. Go, yes, sir.
So speaking on features that you were talking, I think one thing I would like to see with WebRTC, and think it will make it a lot easier for lots of people to integrate RTC, WebRTC, if it has a service stack, because most service providers, they're back in the SIP. So if WebRTC had a service stack, but not SIP, it just would make things quite easier.
So the question was, why don't we put a SIP stack on WebRTC and turn WebRTC into a SIP phone? I think that was the question.
So that's where actually the whole WebRTC discussion started 2 years ago, and it was, I think, pretty clear that that's not the best model. We don't want to create a SIP soft phone. We want to create something that is really flexible and can provide real-time communication as a feature inside any app, and you should not have to deal with SIP just because you want to do that.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you have to use SIP. If you add SIP aside,
Yeah.
that's a feature.
You can add SIP if you want to. There is JavaScript for that.
Yes.
There are a couple of additional points on the Chromium roadmap that I remember seeing. One being recording and another one being screen sharing or desktop sharing. Any comments on where those are and when we might expect to see them?
Yeah, both of them are mostly being hashed out in the standards on how to do it the proper way, and as soon as that is getting closer, we'll implement them.
This side of the room, you guys haven't asked me any questions.
Phil, we have
need a few
someone waving bird.
There we go. All right.
In my experience, one of the most challenging aspects of using web-based voice, mainly through Flash, has been people getting their microphone settings right. Can you hear me? Is the volume, is it too hot? When you get distortion, is it too low? You can't hear the person. Is it off? Is it muted? And you know, like Speaks Codec has voice activity, you know, detects voice and whatnot. What does WebRTC do for the application developer so that it's not, you know, does it provide any of that, or do we need to monitor the activity level and, you know, auto gain? Does it have any of those features in the voice?
Oh, yeah, so the question is around the helping the end user getting a good experience because they don't know exactly what's happening there. And absolutely, we have a lot of that already. And obviously, you compare with Flash, and it's the stack that's sitting in what we have is a slight notch higher up on the scale there in terms of quality of that. But we also continue to develop in that area to do auto detection of whether there is any audio coming, if the audio is distorted, etc. So it's definitely an area that it's better than what you have experienced on Flash and what we have today. It can get even better in the future.
I'll echo that, and from our experiences both using Flash and WebRTC, that is the case. And I think also the inherent challenge is computers as things you can talk to. There are still many out there that are not set up to actually do that well. They have crappy microphones. And people's expectations, it's really interesting, users' expectations versus what they can actually do with it is a mismatch that we need to figure out. And as great as software you could write, a shitty microphone is still going to sound like a shitty microphone. And so what's nice is computers more and more, the hardware being built in is better and better. I think there will be a point where we won't have to worry as much because the inputs are just better.
Just a comment and a thought process on that. I believe fundamentally most PCs have a camera and microphone that are installed in a checkbox for the outside of the box that says it has it. And users don't trial them. I think the interesting thought with WebRTC is when we get it out there, when people go into Costco to look at a PC, they're actually going to try to make a WebRTC call with it and see how it works on a video. I mean, imagine for a moment you're out buying the PC at Costco, and it's really easy to click on a website and make a communication to a friend because it's there, and you can evaluate the quality of that device for real time before you buy it. And all of a sudden, you know, I got to tell you, I got an HP PC. I like HP. They're fine. The camera sucks. But it's checked that it has a great HD camera. Well, it's HD in half definition as far as I'm concerned. So, and by the way, that's pretty typical, right? And I think it's, you know, it's once people actually start to use it, because nobody checks that. When you buy a computer in the store today, almost everybody checks the quality of the microphone, the quality of the experience. The minute we have this technology, people will actually start to care about it, and therefore we'll get a massive improvement in quality of the devices. Or alternatively, of course, that's always an advertisement for the guys in the back right of the room, which is to get yourself a wearable I/O device that improves that experience.
Can we get just a little bit of feedback from Twilio as to metrics around success rate of a completed call using Flash versus WebRTC since you guys just implemented that?
Yeah, I think the biggest difference for us is just its overall quality. And speaking back to you're talking about using free software as much as possible. So we went the route with Flash that we didn't have to license Flash servers. And so we were doing it TCP over the internet. That was not great for audio. With you guys, we're using UDP, so that's great. The codec's better. So in general, I would say experientially, the quality is significantly better. From connectivity and whatnot, it's pretty much the same. But the key thing is what does it sound like? And that's where we've gotten the best feedback. I mean, we launched our Twilio client with WebRTC support about 3 weeks ago. I would say as a volume of traffic, probably about 2/3 has moved over, of our customers have moved over to that and implemented that and rely on WebRTC.
Excellent. And unfortunately, that brings us to the end of our time. I'd like to thank the panel.